Rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, go right to the informational agenda. Dr. Colley with the middle school update, please.
As you know, we have been trying, like gangbusters, to take out the stuff with the PCBs out of the middle school. We're pretty much down to crunch time. One of the things I've been trying to track is how many rooms, when do the samples come back from the lab, and then, you know, when are we expecting to move into these areas. So, as you can see, we have the pictures up there. I'm going to start trying to draw what we have. Can I borrow these? I'm just going to circle it. We have some areas that we have already done some testing in. We'll probably have to do some additional testing to double check the numbers. So we have this area here. We have
That's the sixth
this
grade
area here.
It's eighth grade.
And those are the ones that are coming on next. We will, over the next day or so, turn all this, I'm going to use a different color. Can I do that?
Yeah,
Touch it.
Start black.
touch the red. Yeah, there you go.
This area here will be turning over to testing probably in the next day or so. Or using a different color. And then that's in the lower level, which basically is most of the classrooms, because most of them are downstairs. If I go to the upper level, there's some areas that are already done. Upper level, they did this part.
It's still black.
And when you say done, do you mean testing also, or just cleaned?
Some of the testing. That's why you're right. Upper floor. That's there. And then the next piece to be done is this corner up here, which is hopefully going to be done by tomorrow. Looking towards the end of the week, pretty much the rest of it will also be done. I'm just focusing on the classrooms because those are where we're going to put the students. There are some rooms that are going to take a little longer. For example, the auditorium, the gym, downstairs. It includes this part of the music room. It's a lot of the mastic or the tecton panels, plus rugs, plus issues with that room that made it a little bit more difficult. So these areas are going to take a little longer. Some of this actually is going to be done, right? The areas around the small gym, the voice locker room, that pretty much is going to be done.
Yep.
But there's a few little areas like the gym and the music room that are going to have to wait till next week to be finished, and then the testing will go out and hopefully come back. The issue is looking at this. You're talking about sending or trying to capture the testing on a rush job. Basically, we really should let the air circulate for a couple of days, but if we want to try to do this, You're trying to rush it. You're going to try to get it with the minimum amount of time. Throw in the sampling probably tomorrow night for the rooms that we have and the rooms we're going to get by tomorrow night. Do the testing. Try to move everything back into the room so we may have most of this available to teachers either Thursday afternoon, Friday, Saturday, but the testing's really not going to come back till Saturday at the earliest.
Can you clarify for me which areas have had testing sent out and which areas are ready to send out? And then the black area is the area that still needs to be cleaned but will be cleaned in the next day? Is that what it is?
They're pretty much clean. They're taking down the containment. It's an issue of taking down the containment. There's still some work to be done on the outside. They had to slow down on the outside when the hurricane was coming. They actually had to secure some of the windows. Because when you take out the caulking, the windows are almost floating. They actually had to insert some shims. And in one side of the building, they had to go in and secure the windows because, you know, that was the side that was going to get the first hit from the hurricane. So they stopped some of this work, and now they're taking off again. So the inside may be done, but until the outside gets done where the caulk is, if you start trying to draw air from those ventilating units and you're pulling in from the caulk that they just sat there and scraped, you're just going to pull it right into the room.
So
this area, hopefully they can finish in the next day or so they can turn it over to get the testing done. But again, the issue is you can rush it. It's within the testing limits of, you know, X number of hours plus 4 hours to collect the sample, and then you send it off, and hopefully in 3 days you get the
okay, so that area is almost done.
This area.
The red.
This area and this area, and I'm going to switch. And this area. One of the things they did is upstairs, downstairs, this corner.
Yeah.
That was the first to be done.
Okay. So that's
So
done
now
and
they're trying
sent.
to do the other corner, and then underneath this area here.
Is the
they'll
one
also do
that you're working.
The cafeteria is still being dealt with. There's a lot of tech in there. I believe they did this side, and they're
Yeah,
working on this one.
there's only one portion of the cafeteria that needs to be complete, with the exception of that. Everything else on the upper floor.
Is
with
right,
that,
there's like a little section of the cafeteria itself.
right, and then everything else has been broken down and cleaned.
Okay.
There's a couple columns that need to be abated, but
Okay.
and just to clarify on all of that, from a construction standpoint, on Wednesday, by the end of the day, tomorrow, after the second shift, we should be done with everything, with the exception of a couple small caulking areas, maybe on the exterior, maybe a couple windows, and then on the interior, done with everything and pretty much clean.
Okay. Eric?
You said testing has gone out in some of the rooms. Have we had any set?
Hasn't come back yet.
Okay.
The earliest sets are due tomorrow, and that's for that quadrant in the corner.
And can we be notified if anything comes back above levels? Because that's going to really mess up the whole, whatever we decide tonight, it's going to mess everything up if something comes back too high.
Yeah, because, you know, again, I've been pushing them, they've been pushing themselves. The longer these ventilating units that we just got balanced, some of them today, right?
They're in the process of
They're in the
balancing
process of being balanced out.
So the longer they run, the cleaner the air, but we've been trying to rush everything to try to get it in on time. Like I said on Wednesday, for those of you who were at the informational meeting, we're also going to do what the EPA recommends, which is, you know, take a look at which of the 209 PCB molecules really exist in these materials, because that could tell us, you know, is it the worst of the worst, or some that are not as bad. They're not good, but they're not as bad. Usually you have to figure out how many, I think it's the number of chlorine atoms inside those molecules. Which I believe some of these testing that we're doing now will go off, and they'll do the testing not just for the room, for the totals, but then they'll split up and try to figure out which of the molecules.
We're doing some of the baseline results that way, so some of the early tests in the building to see basically it's a profile of what actually exists in the building that we're doing. So there's 209 different PCB congeners, and when EPA sets their limits, they look at the most toxic. So if we do a site-specific risk assessment by looking at exactly what is in the PCBs here, that's what we're looking at and trying to see and do a site-specific risk assessment.
Tony?
I would think that was something that would have been done with the initial testing to see what type of PCBs you have.
Well, it's
in
done.
fact, some aren't as
There's
bad.
there's different thresholds of testing. There's first is Arachlor, which is a trade name very specific to PCBs, the trade name. Then you do homologs, which is what we've been running, which is what EPA requires. And then the third is this congener. And congener is very expensive, very difficult, and a long turnaround time. So it's one of the reasons we didn't do it. The pilot had success, so we were looking at not necessarily needing to look at site-specific risk assessment, but for the purposes of we're getting close here, we want to really see where this number is going to be. We want to make sure we had an accurate, specific site assessment done so that we could look at those numbers when we come back with the finals after the work is all done.
Eric?
When are you looking at turning the schools over to us?
I mean, from the air's perspective, we have those areas that we've already collected. We'll have results tomorrow for the first quadrant there. I think the next ones will be due on Friday, and if we get some collected tomorrow, we're actually pushing the lab to work over the weekend. So we're looking at probably in the weekend is when we're going to start seeing results back. That's the best that we're going to have as far as getting air sample results back. That doesn't allow for any retesting or anything else. This is really the first set of results we're getting, and it's basically based on the push that we had last week, which was really a significant push to get this building remediated, which is, again, nearing probably 95% of the targeted areas that we look at.
Certainly appreciate the update to where we're at. Somewhat have my handle around the process as you've described. We've left it up to you to conduct the remediation as outlined in your proposal. The question I have is what would happen if we occupy the building tomorrow in the rooms that the tests haven't come in yet? If I recall, the implication of exposure is a long-term exposure. So if we went in the building and started unpacking tomorrow in the rooms that are cleaned out.
Yeah, that is occurring. That actually started occurring as soon as the BCDs were collected. They've been doing that. The rooms, a lot of the rooms have actually been put back together, especially that first quadrant.
Okay. So in other words, if the tests come back and there is a problem, we can say, okay, well now we have to look at alternate plans. But if it's cleaned out, we can start to unpack and assume that the tests are going to come back.
As soon as we've collected the PCB errors, they've been starting to move furniture back in. Maintenance staff has been in trying to do as much putback as they can and make
Our
the building
maintenance
ready.
staff, correct?
Correct.
That first quadrant, Mr. Sullivan, we finished that. They went back in, put the lights back, basically secured the lights back up, and then moved all the furniture in. So those rooms in that first quadrant actually look like you would walk into a classroom. The desks are all set up. All the teacher stuff is laid out.
Great.
Okay.
Yeah, what we're talking about is these areas here have furniture in them, because I saw some of them already set up. And that was last.
Yeah, on the lower.
This area, sorry. These lower areas. So you're going to have this on the top, this area on the bottom, and hopefully this one will be next, and then the black areas by the end of the week.
Mike?
So I guess in follow-up to that, if the furniture's in place, the boxes of school supplies are in the room, is there any reason the teachers can't go in and unpack these boxes?
If we need to do
From a risk standpoint, is there any concern for exposure?
I would say this. I think the school probably needs to take a few days to secure the lights, deal with certain areas. I mean, we moved very, very, very fast at a very rapid pace, And I think it would be good for the school at least to go back in and make sure that the lights are secure and that everything is kind of put back together before they come back in. If that can occur, and again, I think the end of the day tomorrow, which tomorrow's Wednesday, Thursday and Friday, we had planned on having some crews there just to do some cleanup and whatever miscellaneous smaller stuff needs to occur, and then probably work alongside the school in order to try to help put back together whatever needs to be done. And then over the weekend, with I think Bob's blessing, you could probably let people get back in and start to put together their rooms. I think you'd find that.
And that won't interrupt the testing protocol.
No, as long as we've tested, we're trying to keep no disturbance in the part of the testing. So once we've taken initial tests, again, that's immediately things are being brought back in and things are happening.
The gym is more than half empty of all the material that was stored in there. It's already half emptied out and put in the classroom.
Now, you said the cafeteria is partly done, and I see some of the larger areas, the media center, the auditorium, the gymnasium, all those areas that will assumably be worked on while the students and staff are in school. Is that right?
No.
From a remediation standpoint, no. We may be looking at, because right now what they're doing is, the abatement goes in several stages. The first is interior to tectum. That's an asbestos area in addition to PCBs. That work gets done. We clear that from an asbestos standpoint. Then we go in and we start hitting additional PCB, the caulking on the inside, and other materials that don't contain asbestos. So it happens in stages. And so some of these areas, they've done all the inside work.
Okay.
They're in the process of doing the exterior caulking work.
Okay.
And some of the smaller caulking and this foam filler material and other small things in the room, we have to seal. We're sealing all of the glazing compound on the inside. So those steps you can't do while you're in asbestos containment because that's plasticized off. But once we come back into that room, we do that work. So that's the stuff that's left. But essentially what Ross is talking about, triumvirate standpoint, by the end of the second shift Wednesday, they will be done as much remediation as they're going to do. It's going to be left to fine cleaning and testing.
Now, in the auditorium and in the band room underneath, there are no windows. So what's left in those couple of rooms?
The band room was the last room that we got to. We wanted to make sure we took care of the classrooms. The band room is prepped. I believe the tech room is down.
Now, yeah.
And they'll probably scrape.
This area here.
Yeah, they'll probably scrape later on tonight, and then look at the
We have to do
clearance.
the asbestos clearance first. Once that result comes in, then we can tear it down and do the cleaning. There's no other materials in there because there's no windows. So that room should go fairly quick. But that's an area where we're talking about taking airs as late as Friday.
Okay.
And then needing the weekend to basically get results.
Right.
Get it back together.
So that's what I'm saying. For that one, if we take cares on Fridays, they go off to the lab Saturday or Monday, well, Tuesday. We'll get the results back maybe by next Friday. Now, the gym, if I understand it correctly, well, I've been in there, doesn't have it doesn't have the tectum. It does have some areas where there's joints in the wall that they'd have to clean. And then the whole place has to be washed down. So, again, we can lock off this area here, that area here, so it blocks this place off while there's people going in and out and doing whatever they need to do in the other rooms. So these guys can be working or collecting samples in there. The same thing with the gym. We can basically lock it off there and there and there and just be able to work inside the gym. Once we take all the stuff that's in there. I mean, we've been using it for storage of clean materials. So first, all that has to come out before we can even get to the gym. That's why we haven't dealt with the gym. The auditorium is a whole different story. That one's one that, my hope is we can talk to the EPA to see what we need to do with it. It's an internal area. It has tectum in it, if I understand it, or no?
No tectum.
So what's that stuff at the
It's got a black coating on it.
All right, so that's not mastic.
It's almost like a paint.
Oh, God.
It's
thank
like a
God.
paint.
But it's got the carpet in it, and the carpet is, secured by all the chairs. So we may be able to do some cleaning with HEPA filters and whatnot, and then take some testing and hope to God that that's enough. There may be some caulking that needs to be done around the doors. But again, to me, it's more important to have the other areas of the building done first, because we can always go back and use that in a pinch. We can use the auditorium here, or even if it's a small thing, we can run the kids up to the elementary school.
Eric?
A little confused here with what you said about the gymnasium. We took clean items and put them into a dirty room, and now we're going to put those back into a clean room.
You have
Because
to
you said it wasn't
remember.
done yet.
It's not a dirty room. It did have some caulking joints in it, but we actually did clean the room.
So it was cleaned prior.
It was cleaned prior.
To putting clean stuff in it.
The room
Correct.
is HEPA-vac?
Correct. We had done no abatement in there. We basically needed an area to store items in, so.
I know
the
that's
only
what we had talked
materials
about
are some
before,
expansion
but
joints.
what he had just said, it made it seem like nothing had been done, and we just took clean items and put them into a dirty room, and now
No.
we're going to put them back into
It
a
was
clean room.
it was pre-cleaned before we
When
started.
when I think of cleaning out, I'm talking about the abatement, the taking out the materials. We haven't done that in that area.
The gym was HEPA-vac.
Right.
The bleachers were all HEPA-vac. Portions of the wall were HEPA-vac, and then it was washed. All the bleachers were washed, the floor was washed, and then we sealed off some adjacent rooms that needed to have detecting removal done.
Right.
Okay.
So in a sense, we cleaned as best we could, moved clean stuff in there. When the clean stuff goes out, then we're going to go and disturb the stuff that we know has some, well, we suspect, we didn't test every place, but it's the same caulk, so we're assuming that it has PCBs in it. So once we do that, once we disturb it, we're going to have to clean again, correct? Because once you start...
Well, it'll be a
ripping-
smaller containment. It's not the whole gym. We actually are building a small containment over to do the work. So it's
So
a
if it's on
vertical
a
joint,
wall-
4 joints in the entire room. So
Right,
it's
if
what's a
it's on a wall,
significant
you got a
amount.
little place here, you can actually build a containment
Right.
around it, deal with the PCBs there, clean that area again after you get the PCBs out. You know, there may be another one here, another one there,
Yep, there's
another
4
one
total.
there.
Yep.
So you deal with those 4 areas, contain them, clean them, and then you can take a reading off of that whole space.
Mike?
Just to get back to what Eric's original question was, and I appreciate, again, the updates and where we're at today, tomorrow. I think what I heard was Friday. Is that Friday the Triumvirate crew is completed, with the exception of maybe having a return for the gymnasium?
I would say that's correct. Yep.
The gym, we didn't do anything with the auditorium yet.
Nothing with the auditorium.
So you got gym, auditorium, and the finish off the, well, no, because we'll finish your kind of work in the band room. So all we need is
We're
the testing.
by the end of the week, we should be packaged. If anything remains, it may be a couple of the containers that have waste in it. But I think as far as the work inside and out, we're done.
And will we have baseline for those areas that we haven't undergone removal? Will we have new baseline tests?
Haven't gone under.
Which areas are you referring to?
Well,
Because I'm not sure.
The gym.
Once we're out of the gym, are we going to see what the baseline is now?
Oh, yeah.
And then
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we will take tests in those rooms, of course.
so it may come back that it's under the...
He's
levels
asking
of
if we
acceptability.
test it, even before we do the abatement.
I mean, we can. We could take a test in there. We were going to do the limited abatement and then take a test, but we can take one in the room as it exists today, if that's what you're asking about, a baseline.
Well, if we haven't done one, might that indicate that we don't have to do any?
Well, there's caulk in there. I mean, we are addressing all caulk in the building, period. So that's an area where we're going to address it. So to take a baseline, we did, I think it was 25% of the total building. It didn't include areas like the auditorium initially way back in June. We did focus on classrooms, cafeterias, sensitive areas that the EPA would typically recommend you sample. So the auditorium was not one of them. So
Or
we don't have
the
a
gym
baseline.
wasn't one of them either.
No,
No.
and the gym was not.
Eric?
with your testing, finishing by Friday, 3 days to send out, get testing back, work over the weekend. Our start of school, September 6th, giving our teachers 2 days to get into their classrooms and get their classrooms set up. What is your recommendation that we should have a start of school?
I think the testing, the last testing is going to be Friday. So if you want all samples back for that first round of sampling, again, this is going to be first round on everything. You're not going to have those back until probably that Tuesday, so the 6th. I think you also need time, again, if we're finishing Friday, you have to put the building back to some sense of order. It's got to be safe from a code standpoint. There's light fixtures that do need to be addressed, that the work involved disturbing some of the fixtures to do the work. So those things have to occur. I don't know that that can occur over the weekend. If you were to ask me, I would suggest you need at least that week to finish everything, but that's just my opinion. To have results come back in and have everything in hand and be able to make some decisions and be able to get everything really fully back to where you can operate the building.
But with what Mr. Sullivan said earlier, long-term exposure, we could actually get teachers back into the school on Monday to get their classrooms ready.
Monday's Labor Day.
Oh, Tuesday, I'm sorry.
Tuesday.
Yeah. Absolutely. There's nothing barring anybody from going into the building as soon as remediation is done. And that, what we've said is Friday, remediation and air samples collected. So as of Friday, there will be nothing preventing anybody from going in the building. You're just not going to have data in your hands.
Can I ask one more question to Dr. Colley?
Just coming to sit down.
Have you, by any chance, contacted Department of Ed on getting a waiver for a 2-day?
I have asked them. Their response was basically no, there's enough days in the year because it's early in the year for the school committee to consider taking other days within the school year, whether it be extending them in June or other days. I did ask about the holidays, by the way, and they said no unless you get a local ruling, local law basically created just for Westport for 1 year to allow the use of holidays for work. So it'd be things like, Veterans Day, even if it's for staff development, Veterans Day, Martin Luther King Day, days like that, you could not use unless you got somebody like the senator or the rep to put local legislation on our behalf, and it gets accepted.
What about Saturdays?
You could do Saturdays, and you could do other days like...
Dr. Colley, I'm going to stop you here because we're going into the opening date change. I'm just suggesting maybe we move into the action agenda if nobody has any other questions on
I think that's where we're leaving anyway.
the update. So we're good on the update. You've given us all the information. Let's move to the action agenda so we can actually discuss the district opening date change. Go ahead.
There's other issues beyond just state law or federal law, which is the holidays. You also have them in the contract, so it would have to be a negotiated item with the teachers to come in on a day they usually don't come in. You have the ability to determine when your 180 days are within school or legal days of the week, like Monday through Friday. So if you go into Saturday, it would have to be negotiating with the unions as to what does that look like for them. If you were to take a day like Good Friday, for example, that's not a national or legal holiday from the state's point of view, but it is considered a holiday within the teacher's contract. Days at the end of the year, the only thing you run into is, depending on the number of days that you use for snow days, you're pushing very close to June 30th. We usually give ourselves 5 days. Right now, you're at June 19th, which I believe is a Tuesday. So if you got June 19th as a Tuesday, I'll get there in 1 second. Unfortunately, the calendar doesn't go that far, I would think. February, March, April, May. June 19th is a Tuesday, so with 5 snow days, you're putting it at the 26th. If you delay any more than a couple of days, you're really pushing close to the 29th, which is the last possible day of the school year. So you know, if you were to ask me the same question, I would say a couple of days. I know they would prefer a week, but if you're going to do anything in terms of the delay, I would do a couple of days. You can add one at the end of the year, pushing the end of the year to the 20th, trying to negotiate with the unions using like Good Friday for Staff Development Day, working through one of the staff development days, either in the fall or the spring. That gives you 2 days, but if you go beyond that, then 1 or 2 extra snow days and you're into the following week.
Eric?
And in your conversation with the Department of Ed, did you give them a scenario of our testing comes back high, and now we're out school longer than the 2 days that we're trying to squeeze in there?
At that point, they basically said, you know, there's been very, very, she can remember one time in the last few years when the commissioner broke the 180 rule, and that was a school that had an issue in June. So they didn't have any more days to go in that year.
Mansfield, I think, had a problem with the water line, like 2 days before school started, and they got a waiver for the 4 or 5 days that they were out. So.
I asked about that, and they said they wouldn't consider us for that kind of a waiver. I don't know what the situation was in Mansfield and who talked to who or who had... Never mind. I'm just going to leave it at that. I mentioned that, and they said no. They said you can use some of your vacation time. But I know that's difficult because most people, you know, I get parents calling the office the minute we finish one vacation, when is next year, so that I can reserve the same place I'm going to this year. So you talk Christmas, February, and April breaks. The minute you start cutting into them, you're going to affect some families, or quite a few people, not just families, staff as well. That tends to make plans around those long-used vacations.
Mike?
The 180-day rule, how's that applied to seniors?
Seniors get 180 days minus 10, I believe. Minus 12? So it's 168. So in other words, they can have the graduation, and, you know, before graduation they can stop coming for 12 days. That's usually how we try to figure out which weekend graduation has to be in.
So I have a question for, I guess, probably directed best at the two of you. You're saying Friday you'll be done with the little things, incidentals, and whatever else that you need to do. Testing should be done Wednesday. Am I right by that? Is that...
The couple areas that we talked about, like the cafeteria, that part that's still under abatement, and the band room, those are likely to be on Friday. So Friday's really the last day we're going to be collecting here.
But in most of the classrooms?
Most of the classrooms will be done.
Most of the classrooms will be done Wednesday with testing.
Correct.
And so what exactly will you be doing for the Thursday and Friday in those classrooms that will be finished?
Really, at that point, we will be awaiting test results. So those are areas where furniture will be being moved back.
Well, I'm just wondering...
The school's going to have to put the lights back.
Light fixtures back.
I'm just wondering if those particular areas would maybe be okay to get some of these teachers getting their stuff back in, getting their classrooms prepped. I hate to start off the year, personally, behind the 8 ball.
What do you mean by that?
Well, we're slotted to start on the 6th. So if we don't start on the 6th, we're starting off behind the 8 ball already. And we're being forced to either decide whether to split the district into, you know, middle school starts a different day and everybody else goes another day, or we force the whole district back, or we start eating up days for maybe just the middle school, or, and I just feel like we're starting off behind the 8 ball. And I'm just curious, can we, you know, can they start moving into these classrooms on Friday and still get these kids starting, you know, on a solid foundation on Tuesday, or not? Are we completely out of the ball game here, or?
We're not, except for a couple of things, and honestly, you know, some of this is happening as we speak. Somebody whispered, "Where's Mike Duart?" Well, he's putting up lights because he's our electrician. So he's over there, you know, breaking his neck trying to get this done. I'm going to see if he can bring in some additional help. He's done that in the past, but they're not always easy to get. And I don't know, even with 2-3 people, how fast can he go to put these rooms back together, because each room is a different condition. So, you know, imagine taking this ceiling off and you got all these lights well, you first remove the light fixture, and sometimes you can work around the light fixtures, but in other places you can't. You actually have to take the whole thing, so all you have is the wires hanging out. You know, it'd be one thing to be able to say, well, the kids are going to be here during the daytime, so you don't need the lights, but I wouldn't want to put them in a place that has wires hanging out. So he would have to give me an idea how quickly he can get all the rooms. So can he get to all the rooms between now and Tuesday? I don't know how much help he can pull off, you know, from people who have helped him in the past to get that done. The other part is, you know, let's imagine that some of these rooms, because we rushed in there, or the wind was blowing a certain direction while the ventilators are going, but they're working just down the, you know, down the hallway, 2 windows down on the other part, and the air gets sucked in, and we get some airs that are above the threshold. Do we then say that room can't be used? That may be a way we go, but we're not going to find that out till Friday, Saturday. So we may say this room can't be used, but we can use this one, this one, this one, this one. So we'll be juggling some rooms at the last minute.
That leads me into what I wanted to bring up, and I'm glad you mentioned that in case some levels do come back. I would definitely be in favor of, if we did have to delay the start of the school year, delaying just the middle school. In case levels come back, if we delay the whole system and levels come back, now we've affected 1,800, 2,000 students instead of just 500 and something. I know you mentioned at your parents' thing that you wanted to have everyone start at the same time. I just think we need to affect as least amount of people as possible. And if levels do, if we delay for 2 days, and we find out the middle school comes back high, now we've affected the whole district. Do we go out even longer now? Start the kids, everyone else on September 6th like they're supposed to, and we'll deal with the middle school. And if we have to get the teachers in there 2 days prior, let them do it. And if we have to delay them 2 days, then do it that way. But I can't see affecting the whole district for a middle school.
Jim?
It sounds to me like we have the answer from the engineers and the triumvirate. The answer we need is when can our people have the building put back together?
Want to give me a second?
Need
See
to
if I
ask
can
Mike
get-
if he can get it done.
Yeah.
And if he can't, under whatever circumstances he's working, do we need to hire an electrician company to come in and help, or?
Well, that's the point. He's got other people he
Yeah.
can call in.
I'm sure.
The problem is
a 3-day weekend.
Well, again, part of the problem is until they release the areas, he can't get in there to see how much work there is, to see how many people he's got to call. So that's what I'm saying. He's trying to do that now, but I can try to call him if you.
Mike, yeah, please do.
Yeah, I'd appreciate if we could, go on with our decision. I understand that there may be variables that change. We're having a meeting now. We've been presented with the fact that the school is available to us for Friday. Apparently there's some adjustments for overhead lighting. The lighting's been there, so we can understand there's some approaches to it. But I'm in favor of, as I heard, I don't know if it was a motion, to delay the middle school opening by 2 days and open the district as planned.
Is there a second? Is that an official motion? Are you making a motion?
Can we wait
We
to
just
get?
wait to see what Mike Duarte says?
Can we
Then
take
we'll
a
have
5-minute
to
delay?
Yeah,
delay the
actually,
call.
let's recess for 5
Take a
and wait for that information.
Yeah. How about emotions?
That'd be good, huh? Text him. I do too, yeah.
You grabbing waters?
You want one?
This place is hot. I need a shower.
Todd?
I don't, they're usually right around the corner here, but.
We have to have the cesspools empty.
Beth, are we still on?
We're still live, yes.
Say that again? Oh, who was that? That was Eric. They took a recess.
Was it disturbing to talk on the phone while you guys were chit-chatting?
No, I think we were just maybe hoping to get an answer of some kind before we moved on.
To delay for 2 days in middle school.
Well, actually, Mike is saying if he works through the weekend and he brings in some help, he should be done by Monday.
Okay. That's the answer then.
Is he going to be able to?
I told him, I said, you know, they're going to hold you to it.
That's right.
And he goes, you know.
Yeah, but this is a long weekend. Is there any cool people?
He's apparently got everybody coming in town.
Really?
Oh, he's going to do, he's going to work all weekend.
He was probably home having dinner, so he's going home. He's like that.
That's why I made the comment I made when I answered the phone. Yeah, he's going to work through this weekend. That's what he's going to do.
He is so dedicated.
I got an answer. Where'd Tony go?
We don't have to worry about that. Let's just.
Well, if we did, there's 2 professional
Tony
development
Gold.
days.
Oh.
November 8th of this year and February 10th.
Okay.
That you can use those 2 days.
There's a half day.
2 half days. Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
That's what I.
But yeah, but there's
You want a
2 days that
ceiling
you can
thing?
work with your professional development days that are half days, you're making full days.
Call the meeting back to order. Dr. Colley, your answer. It's like Jeopardy.
I'm going to...
You phoned a friend, and
Oh,
what's
I
the answer?
phoned a friend, and his answer is he's got 4 people working with him. He could perhaps bring somebody else, just to give himself some breathing room. And I told him you would hold him to it, but he said he could be done by Monday.
Done by Monday if the
Meaning
kids are just
he's
start for
going to work
Tuesday.
Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, all the way through the holiday.
I do want to. Would that be teachers start or kids start? Is that coming in with teachers?
He's just saying he's going to get the lights done by Monday.
That's the last.
Would the teachers be available to go into the classroom after Monday or before Monday? That's what.
It's a holiday.
I realize that. I know.
The building's going to be open because there's going to be people working in it. I mean, we've had buildings open pretty much, not during the weekends, because most of the other buildings during the summer, if we had anybody working overtime, we've had them at the middle school, not at the Mac, West, or the high school. So, but we've had people asking, when can I get into my rooms in the other buildings
We ask the teachers.
during the summer?
I'm a teacher.
I mean, other
I don't
days.
go in 2 days early.
I do. I also just want to. I just want to bring something to light that Michelle Raposa mentioned while you were breaking there, and just as another piece of information that we'll need to chew on. If we decided to delay just the middle school, now we're adding an additional 2 days of bus transportation cost, or whatever.
Yeah.
Whatever. So that's just another piece of.
Can I bring up another thing also?
Yeah, go
Speaking, there are 2 professional development days, November 8th of this year and the 10th of next year.
Yep.
Instead of having half days, have the full days. And you have 2 days that you can play with, professional development days. And instead of having
Yes,
early release.
and what do you mean by having full days?
Do you mind if I ask?
No, I'm trying to figure out why you would have a full day on a half day.
Well, I just was handed a note. I'd like to, if we could ask on what was meant by it, that there was 2 days that were available. Maybe I'm getting a text on that answer. I don't know.
The reason is because I've heard that question before. The issue is those days as half days count as part of our 180. So just adding the second half of the day doesn't add additional days to the calendar. So unfortunately, it does increase the amount of time the kids would be, working on curriculum, but it's not going to meet that deadline that the state.
Do you want to come up a little
Okay.
bit? So, okay.
The full, she can, I didn't understand exactly. I just got your 2 dates, and if you wouldn't mind
Can you
explaining
come
that
up?
to us.
Yeah, come up to the mic, and that way people in TV land can. Sorry.
Just trying to avoid that.
We have 2 full-day professional days.
Yes.
If we made those half-days, it would count for the students, and that would make up your 2 days. And then if you wished us to compensate you for those, just two other half-days somewhere. And then we have all of our professional days, and you've got at least 2 days to play with.
So right now, those students are not slated to come in at all.
Right.
So it's an empty day
Bring
for the
them in half
students, is
days.
what she's
Turn
saying.
them into.
My question would be, does it meet the 990 hours? Because that's the other requirement.
Well, we have half-days other times that they count as student days, so
They count as student days, but you have 2 measures the state goes by. One is 180 days, which some of them can be half days. But the other measure, because they didn't want everybody to have half days all year long, was at the elementary school, you got to go 900 hours. At the middle school and high school, you got to go 990 hours of instruction. So the question is...
I think it would be worth looking into. I don't know. I
Well,
don't have all those hours in my head.
The principals have done the calculations, so I'm wondering if you miss... What do you miss? You miss...
It would be 2 days.
6 hours.
Well, you miss at least 6.5 hours, a little less than that, maybe 5 hours. What's your... But how many hours do you have above the 990 now? Because I know there was a number.
I don't know.
Well,
Can teachers get their rooms
Mrs.
ready in
Tudelo?
1 day?
To answer your question, how many below, I have 10, but those have been exam days, so you can take them away those half days.
No, I'm thinking
So
more
at the
the
high
middle
school.
school, if we just do the middle school.
she has 10. He doesn't know what he has.
I would say
I would say it's the same amount.
10.
So if we take 6, that'd be one way to make it.
I mean, without affecting holidays, there's ways to go about it. But if teachers can get their rooms ready in 1 day, and he's ready by Monday, they can get it on Tuesday.
You mean starting on Wednesday for the middle school?
Just for the middle school, give them 1 day to get their rooms prepped,
Okay.
Jim?
starting on Thursday.
Well, that's true.
Mr. Poser just brought up the question
Yeah.
of the bus. Are there any other logistical issues from the district level that there would be problems caused, maybe in the way the DOE looks at the way things are reported, if one of our schools is offset in the calendar?
I'm trying to think. The only question would be sending back to the DOE an amended number of hours sheet so they know that we're going to reduce the number of hours at the middle school and hopefully stay within the 990.
I do have some like food service orders and things of that sort. Kitchens need to get in time to be able to, they write everything down before they even start. Like, I don't know what the situation is. Most of the kitchens seems to be one of the last places. They come out of it, like my 2 daughters, my middle daughters, usually that's not something I thought so over a long weekend. So right now, they're slated to be on Tuesday and Wednesday of next week. So, that's just another,
Yeah, but we can adjust
30-minute
that.
piece that's-
Yeah, we can adjust that. I'm not too worried about that.
Transportation,
Transportation is the bigger one.
Big one.
What
For
cost
the
would that be?
The cost, and I have to have that, I couldn't get through the was a lot, but they'd also be the first couple of days without middle school or high school, they still would have to run the same routes because I don't have any time to change my routes right now to have them ready for Tuesday. So
No, and you still have to run the kids going to Bristol Aggie.
Right. Bristol Aggie, they start at 7. We only have about 10 students for Bristol Aggie. I mean, that could be as easy as taking asking them to get us a smaller bus.
Half a
and
bus.
Go around and pick the Bristol Aggie because they can pay
Sure, they'd be willing
$125
to.
for transportation, so.
But that's if we
have an
do-
obligation to them.
You're talking that's if we do the whole district, otherwise
Right,
you can
right,
use the
exactly.
same high school
Correct.
buses.
Yeah.
The only other issue for us logistically would be people who are working across the district. So you may have, for example, a speech therapist that's supposed to be in the middle school, the elementary, and the high school. So on days that she would have been in the middle school, the state doesn't like you to double charge, like I'm going to meet these kids for extra hours, and then I'm going to go to the middle school and meet for extra hours on those days. And we will have to pay some of that staff either twice, so they're here for the other schools when the middle school's out, and then again when the middle school's meeting, or we're going to have to say to some parents, on those days, certain staff are not going to be here because they would start with the rest of the schools, and therefore when the middle school was meeting, they wouldn't be available to the middle school because otherwise either we pay them double for those days or we don't.
Mike?
Again, in the spirit of understanding, there is some complications connected with this situation that's developed. And with that spirit in mind, I'd like to make a motion that we delay the middle school opening for 2 days and open the middle school on September 8th.
Is that the one?
Yeah.
Second.
Discussion?
In the last couple of days, I probably spoke to 50 parents, some teachers, and everybody wanted to start Tuesday.
I've heard a lot of people say that, except the parents of.
And as far as the 2 days at the end of the year, I'm sure by June we'll have somehow stuck those in there somewhere, and busing won't be an issue.
Well, I think she had a good idea, and we can add another day somewhere for staff development.
Yeah, out of all the emails that we got, honestly, no one said stagger them. Every email that we all got as school committee members, every one of them said, I don't know if you guys CC'd on them, but every one of them said, please don't start the district 2 days late. Just do the middle school and...
Jim?
Hello? Yep. It's Mike. We're in the middle of the meeting.
And you're live.
Yes.
Yeah, Mike, there was a
Yeah,
second.
Eric
Yes, we're in
seconded.
discussion.
No,
already.
just the lights.
Jim, go ahead.
Your sense from the people you spoke to was that,
All of our emails.
because what you just said was
Different.
yeah, you said something that conflicted with itself, actually. Your statement conflicted, at least in my mind, so I want to clear that up. You started by saying that parents didn't want the schedule staggered. But then you said, start the middle school different from everybody else.
No,
That's
they wanted to
staggered.
start the district on the regular school day
But
and
then-
have the middle
right.
school delayed. If it needed to be delayed, just delay the middle school. They didn't
They might
want,
stagger the whole start.
yeah, they didn't want to
Yeah,
have
okay.
everybody staggered.
Well, if having one of the four schools have a different calendar than the other three doesn't affect how the DOE looks at the way we report our information or the way we run the schedule, then that's fine with me.
Do we need 2 full days?
I'm going to tell you what anybody who's looking down the barrel of this gun is going to tell you. I'll take 2 if that's all you give me.
Well, you'd probably take
But-
a week if we could give it to you, but
Well, I'm simply going to say this. It would be good to have at least a couple of days so that, one, the teachers can get in, get some help from the custodians to, get their rooms opened up, boxes open. Some of that can happen, Thursday, Friday this week, maybe even Saturday if some of them want to go in Saturday. I don't know, too many people try to work on Sunday or Monday, but there might be some people who want to do that. But there'll be some people that will need, help on Monday and Tuesday. They'll give Mike a little bit of a breather, just in case he finds some lights that are giving him troubles to get that done. Gives the custodian some amount of time to do some extra cleaning, because obviously we didn't do, they've done some of the cleaning, wipes and that, so there's some stuff that's been done, but there'll be some things like, I know Mike was going to have the custodians, Mike and Kim were going to have the custodians do some cleaning inside the classrooms once the stuff is moved in. Like some of the cabinets were just closed and moved. So stuff inside the back, vacuum the inside of the closets, that kind of thing. And if we have some rooms that come back above the threshold, we can do another cleaning before we take another reading, hopefully, at least with the areas that we're going to get back soon, if there's any issues with those areas.
Which one of you guys had your
I
hand
think
up first?
he
Okay,
wants
Mike,
to
go
call the
ahead.
question, yeah.
No, I haven't spoken to the motion, so
I'll go ahead.
I just, again, I think having 2 days gives a little bit of comfort, an opportunity for the staff, the incoming students to feel more comfortable that it's been done appropriately. That's why, with all the information we've discussed here, it appears that the biggest issue we have to deal with is making up 2 days. And as Mr. Viveris indicated, he has the confidence that with the good cooperation of the teachers and the entire staff and the students and families, we'll make up those 2 days somehow.
I like the idea. I'm going to work on that one.
Eric.
I know the janitorial staff wasn't able to work in the middle school, so they were obviously, are all the other schools absolutely ready to go?
Yes.
So we can take every person out and put them into the middle school the last 3 days?
You've actually been doing that, right?
We've already been shifting staff.
Okay.
We kind of told the custodial staff that we would have to do some of that. Right now, I know the cafeteria staff will do something very similar. It'll be more difficult because the thought was if we moved everybody back, in the next couple of days we could have the cafeteria staff prep the 3 other schools and then move everybody to the middle school to help them prep that. So that's going to be but at least they'll get a couple extra days.
Yeah, is there any more discussion? Motion on the table is to delay the middle school opening by 2 days and open on the 8th, allowing the teachers to come in on Tuesday. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. So the middle school will be opening on the Thursday to the students. The rest of the district will be coming to school regular as they were regularly scheduled on the Tuesday. And there'll be a staggered opening. On to the approval of the minutes for...
Actually, before we leave the Westport Middle School update, I was wondering if there's any other issues surrounding the middle school project that we should be discussing.
Eric, did you have your hand up for something else?
I just wondered, it really has to do with the construction. I was just wondering, have we hired a vice principal yet?
Let's just say I have a call into a person that I want to maybe offer the job to. I have some questions for him, but...
We actually left the informational agenda already.
No, we didn't.
Yes, we did. We're on to the action agenda for the district opening
I
change.
interrupted your suggestion.
No, we were on the district opening date change for the action agenda.
I'm sorry, yeah, okay. You're right. So again, I guess we could go back to it.
I would suggest we go back.
Okay, that's fine.
Because I think, most people here wanted to hear this part of the discussion, but
No,
there's
that's
other
fine. If that's what the board
bits and
wants, I have no
pieces.
problem with that.
Yeah, I just
What is
didn't-
specifically,
No, I would offer the floor to the superintendent if he feels there's some issues regarding the middle school project that we should be going over.
One of the issues, people ask me this all the time. They asked me last Wednesday where we were with the amount of money being spent. So I've been reviewing the big chunk of materials that they keep at the school. A couple of the things that we found out is, when you are talking about people and hours and how much each room takes, we found great variability, and mostly for the worse, not the better. Some of the rooms that we started with that were used to try to figure out what the projections were, detect them, those big panels with the glue was very brittle, so you could literally take a tool and just go rip it off. The whole thing comes down and then just scrape it. Then we found a couple of rooms, but it was only a couple, so we figured if some of the, kind of take the average number of hours times number of people working per room, kind of figure out what your budget is that way. That's where they came up with the numbers. But what we found is more often than not, the average didn't hold. We had rooms where literally the technum did not want to come down. In fact, I was in the building sometime last week, I think it was Wednesday as well, where they've actually had to bring in specialized equipment. It looks like a jackhammer but smaller, still weighs a ton, and literally it has like a flat blade and it just goes along the ceiling trying to scrape off the stuff. So we're having a meeting upstairs and literally the floor is shaking on us because they were right downstairs trying to scrape the stuff up. So it has taken a lot longer per room than they originally estimated. The other part that took some time was, like I said, we had to prep some of the windows and then secure them and then go back out and take the securing and then go back and start the work on the windows again. So I've asked them to estimate additional time, means money. They started using different materials to try to caulk the inside of the windows, and after some of the rooms were done, people went and started trying to clean and the stuff came right off. So we had to call and try to get approval for other materials, because not every building works the same, so what works in one building and somewhere else didn't work in our building. It's kind of like if you had bad news, they came one right after the other. So I've asked them to go ahead and try to calculate, okay, this was the original calculation, X number of hours times X number of people times this kind of square footage. What was the actual, over the last few weeks, what has been the amounts? So it's more. I think I sent that to you in the package, I think.
Eric?
I have a question actually for Triumvirate. Did you try sandblasting at all? Would sandblasting have worked instead of bringing in a jackhammer type of?
We debated that, but I think with the level of containment and what you would have done with the air after that, after you sandblasted, you never would have got the air clean. You would have just pulverized a large portion of
Just
that
curious.
mass. Really, and Dr. Colley did a good job kind of summarizing that. Specifically, there were a couple key items. The second floor windows did not behave the way that the first floor window did. The first floor window, caulking removal, we were able to do one window with one guy in about a half a day. So you can get almost two windows with one guy. It came off very easily. The second floor windows, it seemed like there was a different style of waterproofing that was used, and we wound up having to go with essentially a tool that would remove the caulking, and it took just about double the amount of time. We had to work on weekends when we did the original estimate. We were under the assumption that we weren't going to have to work on weekends. That added money. But the big thing was the first floor. When we did the pilot test, we worked in room 164. That was in the corner. When we took the technum down, the mastic came down right with it, and we just had to scrape the seams. So when we went to the second floor, the technum came down, the mastic stayed. We then looked at another room on the first floor. It was down the hall from 164. And when you took the drop ceiling down, you could see that the mastic kind of came down with the technum too. So when we put the estimate together, I think between us and even with other bidders, we kind of all made an assumption that, look, the first floor is cooler, the first floor is going to behave differently than the second floor, and we should assume that it's probably going to take us, on an average, I think we came up with about 80 hours, 80, 90 hours, six-man crew for basically a day to do one floor. We got into the second room in the downstairs started ticky-tacking down, and it stuck like the first floor stuck like the second floor. So we wound up having to do the same process that we did on the second floor throughout the first floor, and it doubled the amount of time. So we had about 350 hours on the first floor of 700 man-days. 700 man-days to do the second floor. We wound up going slightly over on the second floor, but we doubled our time on the first. And that, you know what, the building kind of threw a curveball at us. We didn't expect that.
Is that our responsibility, though? That's the whole purpose, I thought, of doing test rooms was to see what it was going to take to clean a room. And you came to us and said, I can do it in this day. I'll have the school back here September 6th. And I know I can clean it without working weekends. And now we're sitting here and we're getting a bill for a lot more than what the town was planning on, 2.3 million. It's going to be a lot more than that. And why are we responsible for that? I mean, you went in, you guys did your test rooms.
We based our estimate, and it was clear, and I think everybody made this assumption between us and other people that looked at the job, that it was an estimate. And we based that estimate on the information that we knew at the time. We were also asked about doing a fixed price, and I think it was brought up twice, and it wasn't a project that you can do that with. This was a job that, unfortunately, the building conditions changed as we started to get involved, and I think we were really trying to be very cognizant over what we needed to do on this job in order to put the necessary labor to get the job done by the time that the school was going to open. And I think we've done a very good job at that, but unfortunately, it was more money than what the.
So where are we at, though, money-wise? You're almost done, 95%. You said earlier in the presentation.
And
where are we at right now for money?
Without the waste, it's about 2.15 where we stand now, and I have everything broken down and have it over to Dr. Fowler.
And how much is waste guesstimated to be to ship out to New Jersey? I think is where we're going with it, right?
It's going to Michigan.
Michigan.
It's going to Michigan and New York. The waste will come in at about 225 to 250. So really, the biggest proponent of the project is the amount of time it took to scrape the ceiling.
And what is the difference, Ross, from your original estimate?
I think we estimated 1.8.
And now we're at 2.1?
We're at 2.15.
So 350,000.
And again, I know at one point in time, people had asked me to try to ask for whole number, like, give me that. Nobody wanted to do that. Even the other companies afterwards said, no, they would do it by man hours or materials, man and materials. Time and materials is what they call it.
And we discussed, Ross, the other day, Wednesday, about, I think initially the school committee had asked that we test every room in school, and we had a little discussion that maybe that wasn't necessary, that, maybe we test 25% of the school, and, if we could, is that something we could do, Bob?
We actually had an initial conversation with EPA about that when we had them at the table, and we were discussing that issue of how much should we do, and basically EPA will require us to submit a plan for how much to do. And we presented that, and we're told that we really looked at needing to do 100% of the building to get comfort level. So we never have submitted anything other than 100% testing to the EPA. We certainly could go back and do that and see if we could do that. We've actually already undertaken some of the testing. We could stop some of the analysis on some of these things.
Is that a phone call to the EPA? Or?
No, it's actually going to need to be a formal written, and they're going to need to respond to it. And we tried to push EPA I tried very hard to commit EPA at the meeting to work with me, 30%, 25%. My estimate is she's probably going to be looking more at, the EPA is probably looking at more at 50% of the building for what you're going to test. I think in terms of dollars, I know it's dollars. It's certainly not as significant as construction dollars, but certainly, obviously, anything at this point can help. If we want to explore it, we can certainly do that.
Can
still
we
have a
explore
little
that
bit of time.
without, eating up any more time as far as, could that be done?
Because we can collect the samples and then just pull them back. So I can start working with it.
Mike?
Again, I appreciate the updates. It keeps us more informed. As you know, Dr. Colley is the administrator of the project. We authorized him to initiate the cleanup. I'm very pleased that we're talking about a window of 2 days. Do we open an extra day? It looks as though we're moving along successfully. It also looks as though it's costing us a little bit more. And again, that really is Dr. Colley, who will be examining with his staff and support personnel as much as he needs in order to reconcile the paperwork. I'm looking through the packet, and I see that there's field cards, and as time went on, the ratio of supervision to man-hours is, you had one supervisor with 2 people at the beginning, and as it looks as though as it's gone on, some of the samples here indicate there were 16 people with 1 supervisor. So as they got comfortable, I think they moved along quicker. So, I don't know if you're looking for input from us in terms of this news of being over budget. I think that it's premature now for us to know exactly how much and how, where that's going to leave us as a district. I did have one question regarding the initial negotiations. We talked about the advantages of being able to use a company that had a state bid in place. I assume the state bid was a contract FAC 53, which is Triumvirate's contract on a statewide basis to deal with PCP remediation. Is incineration is no longer an option? Is that, because I see a quote of $2.80 per pound on the state contract for incineration of PCBs. Is that what we're paying, or is that, I was surprised to see incineration. I thought it was going to a landfill.
Incineration, it really isn't a good option for the amount of material that you have. Statewide is a vehicle for cities and towns to use. It has some waste disposal aspects to it. It also has some emergency response, and it has immediate response action type activities underneath it. And there's a whole series of outlines and waste disposal options and labor options to choose from. Those rates are also negotiable. They can't go up, but they can go down. So when you have a situation that if you have an abundant amount of waste that you have on this job, that would probably apply if you had a couple of drums. But if you get into a bulk project, it just wouldn't make economic sense to have that type of price applied. So it allows the towns to go back and say, listen, can you put this in line more of something that's going to be more cost beneficial for the town?
You also have the fact that this material also contains asbestos, which obviates the ability to incinerate it, because asbestos is indestructible and it will not. So it's not the type of waste you can take to a facility like that for incineration. And it's also bulk material, which is not just PCB oils and that kind of thing. You've got this Tecta material and so forth. So incineration is not an option.
Right, so
go ahead, Mike.
just what I think I was hearing was that our rates, because of the volume, is actually going to be less than what's on the state bid. Is that?
That is correct.
Okay. Whether we're incinerating, and I can appreciate that we can't, but if I examine this, there may be some asbestos removal. There's some other asbestos contaminated articles going to a landfill, $300 per cubic yard. Is that what we're paying? I'm just, I think we're paying less is what I understood. Okay, that's, I just, as I was looking at what we originally used as a gauge, I thought we came in.
I've spent a lot of time down here. I've spent a lot of time talking to each of you. I've spent a lot of time talking with Dr. Colley about what it is that we're trying to do and where we're trying to go. And we moved very, very fast. And we have taken on what originally seemed like an impossible task. And, if I had this meeting a week and a half ago, we were really, really questioning what was going on and whether or not we were gonna get this. The amount of money that we had to spend each day in order for us to get to a point where we knew that I could sit here and say, we're going to give the building back to you on Friday, was very tough in order for us to get real-time information. And we were with 100 guys there each day, running 2 shifts to try to get this done. These people that worked on site, they should be commended for how hard every one of them have worked. They pulled off a miracle, and I think if you were to go back in the industry and ask anybody in our field, is this something that you could do in less than 3 weeks? I think there aren't too many of them that would say yes, and if they did, they probably would have been in the same boat that I was in, that we knew what we were undertaking. We made assumptions based on information that we had. It's unfortunate that that situation changed. I wish I could sit here today and say we're going to give the building back to you on Friday, and it's going to cost $1.7 million. I really do. But the fact of the matter is, it did change, and the project turned out to be more difficult. The materials ended up sticking to the ceiling and ended up running up the cost. But we have done everything that we can so far to go back and look for ways that we can save costs. We're trying to figure out how we can save costs on the disposal. We're trying to figure out how to save costs on the labor. We're at the point now where we know having a cost overrun of where we're at is going to be a tough thing for the town, and I understand that. So we're trying to work through that. We met with Kim Teason. She said 3 times in the meeting, the EPA, make sure you think about where you're going to be and having a contingency on some of this. It's a moving target, folks, and I wish I could have nailed it, but there were things that occurred that were outside of our control and our knowledge.
I would like to comment on what you said to the testing results. Just speaking from my own perspective, I don't feel comfortable sending those students back in and not having 100% of those rooms tested. I know if I have a parent come up to me who says, is my child's room safe? I want to be able to tell them, this is the number that your child's room came back at, and we feel it's safe. I want to know that my daughter's room is safe, and that your son's room is safe, and that your son's room is safe, and everybody else's children. I don't, in my own opinion, that's just not a place where I feel I'm ready to scrimp and save. And I think, we need to personally test and make sure every single one of those rooms are safe before we send those kids back in there. So I did want to comment to what you said to that.
Ross, you mentioned, we have probably $250,000 worth of dumpsters material back there. Now, is that above and beyond?
No,
that's part of that.
Yeah. And I have that broken down. I can send it out.
That's part of the our original estimate.
Yeah, and we've moved 14 cans off to date. There's another 14, 15 there right now.
Did you have a question?
It's a lot of material.
You kind of floating your hand around? Okay.
No, I'm good.
Is there anything else that we should know?
I just wanted to make being a science teacher, some other people may disagree with me, but I have learned way too much about this PCB issue, and I appreciate the emotions that it brings on people to say, oh my God, my kid is either going to a place that has PCBs in it or has been in a place that has PCBs in it. I really want people not to lose sight of what the EPA tried to do with all these thresholds, with all these rules and regulations, which is to assume the worst of the worst, create some rules and regulations based on those assumptions, which, are scary for people, but they are assumptions, and to some extent, we have to keep that in mind. For example, there's going to be areas of the building that are still going to have some PCBs in it. But again, it's not to say that those areas are unsafe. In other words, you can't walk through them. Walking through outside maybe some areas of New Bedford where you go, to your favorite restaurant, walking down the street, you're picking up PCBs. Eating fish at the local fish market, you may be picking up some PCBs. But, when we're talking about a situation like a building, it's not each individual room that you have to worry about. What you worry about is the totality of the time and places the kids go and spend time in. So, for example, areas that we can't get to, at least not within this period of time, that are going to have PCB are like the stairwells. You would have to actually build staging to get all the way up there to get to those areas to bring down that tectum. We're not going to do that. And the kids use the stairs. But, they're in the stairwell for 3 minutes in passing at the most, maybe 30 seconds going up and down and into the next hallway. So I want people to at least try to get their heads around this idea that if you're in one room versus another room, it's the average. And I know people are still, I don't want to spend any time in that room. It's not the room. It's the amount in total that you spend in the building. Hopefully when we send this study, the extra study to the EPA, they'll send back, okay, we had the assumption original, everything's the worst of the worst. Now we get some data back that maybe it's not the worst of the worst, so it's not as bad as we thought it was. That would be my hope. I mean, the problem is we have had nothing but bad news ever since we started this, and I don't want to make that assumption, so I'm not going there. But the idea of testing every single place in the building, I don't know, it may give you either a false sense of security, or it may give you the idea that, this room's right and that one's not, but I'm only spending 5 minutes in this one and an hour and 20 minutes in that other one, when spending 5 to 10 minutes in this one or a period in this one but 5 periods in the other one, it would make no difference in the totality of what you spend in the whole year.
Can I have a quick comment?
Yeah, Eric.
I exchanged a lot of emails, though, with a teacher that spent 34 years in the same classroom, eating lunch every day in that classroom, and is very concerned of spending a totality in one classroom.
That person
And the other
has a
teachers that are
different...
sitting here spend their whole day in a particular classroom. I'm sure they're the reason why they're here is they want to know that their rooms are clean. And yeah, everyone says kids here, but we also have teachers and staff that spend whole days.
If I were to worry about anybody, I would worry about the teachers. And that's why I'm trying to get people to understand, how the EPA came up with these thresholds and these guidance documents. That's exactly what I'm talking about. If anybody has been exposed, it would be the staff that's been there for a long time, because they've been there for 185 days, or God knows, 6.5 hours a day. And, we don't know what effect that really is going to have on them, because the EPA can't even. They can say there's been correlations in animals. They can't say cause and effect. But they're saying it's not good for you to be there for that long. For kids, again, it's a whole different story, because it's how much time do you spend in each room, not this room versus that room. And again, I want you to keep that in mind, and I'm not even going to say what I hope will be.
Well, I just want to comment, and it may be a question if you feel it has to be addressed, but my understanding is the original project, we also had a certain amount of monies budgeted for ongoing testing, and that we anticipate future years undergoing regular testing to make sure that the quality of the air is improved. Mm-hmm. We've made that commitment. And I'm assuming that even though we're over budget with the major obstacles in removal, we're still continuing with our plans to do regular testing throughout the year to make sure that the environmental shifts in temperature and the heat coming on, et cetera, don't create an unsafe environment. We're still committed to the same safe haven throughout the building. And the guidelines from EPA is what we're relying on. We don't know what's safe and unsafe. We know a lot more now, but we utilize those reference tools as our professionals do.
Right. And in terms of the testing, we were at that meeting, and what we were trying to push is, at that point, we didn't know what the desire of the school committee was, whether to test the whole building or parts of the building, or what testing schedule we were going to use. So when we talked to the EPA, we were trying to nail it down. Do we do chunks of 25% of the building, so over the course of the year you test every area? Do you do 30%? Do you do 50% and then go with something less than that? Again, it would have been nice if they would have committed to that, because then we could come back and say to you, hey, this is what the EPA says, but they tend not to do those things, because if they say that to us, then they come across as having to say that to other places, and they don't want to do that. So they're basically turned to us and, wink, wink, nod. I don't think they're expecting 100%. We only did that because I thought that was the consensus of the board. They basically were like, you give us a percentage and we will react to it. Basically, if we said 10%, probably they say that's too low. If we said 80% and that's above what they had in their mind originally, they go, okay, fine. So if you say 100%, they're not going to argue with that. But we did not ask for anything below that. I think the number we threw out was 30%.
We presented 100% for the baseline once we finish the work of the building. So we will have, after the remediation, 100%. And then we have proposed presently 25% of the building quarterly, so we eventually, and we'll vary the room, so we do 100% of the building in the course of a year's time.
So you'll get two rounds of it.
For each room.
Yeah.
In the course of a school year.
That's reasonable.
Is there anything else on this that we need to know before moving forward? Any other questions? Okay. On to the approval of the minutes for Wednesday, June 22nd, 2011. Any discussion on those? Is there a motion to approve those minutes before we discuss?
Motion to approve.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? No? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Abstain. I wasn't here.
Okay. Approval of the minutes for Tuesday, July 5th, 2011. Yes, you are.
Actually, I have a comment to make on the previous motion I made.
Okay.
On the previous motion?
Yeah, that was the meeting that I left early, so perhaps it's inappropriate that I made the motion to approve the minutes.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Okay,
In other words, the June 22nd meeting, I left at 6:55.
right.
So technically, I shouldn't be making the motion because part of it is,
Okay, so you want to withdraw?
I'll make the motion.
Mike's withdrawing.
I'll withdraw my second, and I'll make the motion to,
I'll second.
Okay.
Okay,
All
so
those
we
in,
got-
Mike withdrew his motion, and Eric is making it, and now Tony's seconding.
Okay.
and then we have two abstentions.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain?
Abstain.
And Tuesday, July 5th, motion to approve.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? No? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And let's see, Monday, July 18th. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second?
Discussion?
Yes. Is that the one that was not recorded? Is that correct?
One of them didn't go on, one of it had no audio.
No, I think it was.
That was
the
August
sec-
2nd?
It was
Okay.
the second.
Yeah.
I'll wait
it's
for
the
my
second
comment
one.
on August 2nd then.
Okay.
Any other
This
discussion?
one was recorded.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Excuse me.
Yes. What, Karen?
Nope, I'm good. I just want to make sure I have,
who's monitoring the
no, I'm just looking at everybody's.
Just looking at
I'm
heads
looking at
nodding or
and
mouth opening.
yeah. Want to make sure we have them.
Approval of the minutes for Tuesday, August 2nd. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Eric, this one?
Yes, this is the one that was not recorded, correct? That went over the
It
air
had
with no
no
sound?
audio, yeah.
Right.
Did it, Beth, the disc that you burned that day, I know Bob walked in the room and burned a disc, did the disc have sound on it?
No.
What happened is, just in the moving of the cart, a wire came loose.
Okay,
Sorry.
that's okay.
We could read the whole thing, I guess.
No, I just, because I
I couldn't, but maybe
remember
somebody could.
her saying, do we need more microphones? And then I remember her burning the disc. I just want to know, I know it didn't go over the air with voice, I just want to know whether it had voice on the actual disc for
No,
clarification.
She had to rely on her notes.
Okay. She does a fine job.
All those in favor?
Additional discussion?
Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead, Mike.
As I'm looking through, this was as we were examining the multiple options that we were faced with.
Yep.
And I made a second of Mr. Viveris's motion under the last page of that date, the top.
Which was made,
My recollection is the motion was to get additional proposals, not one additional proposal.
It has it has one, and he said by September in the notes that I took down.
And my recollection is...
He said another cleaning company by September.
Yeah, I was making reference during that discussion to multiple companies that had been in touch with me that I had forwarded on to the, so we didn't identify companies, but the discussion was not limited to one with my that I recall. I did bring it up in the following meeting, and so I'm aware that it's an area of question, but again, I seconded a motion that I was under the impression was to seek additional bids. I know they came back the following meeting and said they weren't bids, they were outlines or something, but the package called them bids that they put together. So again, the motion, and I didn't make the motion, I seconded it.
I mean, I asked for another bid. I mean, if I said proposal or proposals, I couldn't tell you.
no, I think, and I can see where, sometimes the discussion and the actual motion sometimes diverge in the wording used, so unfortunately, it's the limit of the language. I
actually think that's kind of what you said. I'd like to get another bid.
Right, and I think
Or
just looking
another
at...
proposal.
If I could, because the discussion that ensued, in fact, calls them proposals
Right.
in the plural form. So, that's in line with what I felt at this early stage was still ongoing, and I just wanted to note that. Whatever the chair recommends, I just, if anything, a note to the minutes that that's my recollection.
Can we add a note to it that
That he-
Mr. Sullivan has suggested that he was seconding
Additional,
numbers of proposals, not just one?
right.
Just,
Okay.
my recollection is that it was at least one. I don't think he limited it to one, but the spirit I took it was let's get at least
We
another.
talked about multiple,
Yeah.
but it was at least a
was the
minimum of
timeframe.
one bid.
Yeah.
If we get three,
Yeah.
beautiful.
I think,
Yeah.
I think he felt being under the
That's what
gun.
It just took a different, that's why I asked about the recording of it, because I
Yeah, I wish we
know we've
had,
had
I wish we...
discussion on it.
Well,
I
you
think
may
they're
still would have
concerned-
ended up with the same wording, and depending on how the people who took the
Interpret.
charge to go back and do it,
Well, I think their concern, and Mrs. Pink, I can't remember her first name, is she
Jennifer.
Mrs. Jennifer Pink? She was here that day, and she was even concerned about being able to obtain one additional proposal, from what I remember. So I think you know, they were like, you know what, we think we can get this one at least, and I thought that's sort of the tone.
And I had other
If I
companies.
can, there was a bid package put together that should have been available to any companies that were interested in pursuing this business. I recognize the discussion talked about the DCAM waiver. It wasn't an obligation. We had the discussion. I just wanted to have it noted. I know we're
Thank you.
much further ahead at this time.
Well, the other
So
thing
Karen's gonna
to
know
We
that.
seem
remember,
to have multiple recollections.
And it's hard, there's
and
no
so
video.
noted.
and the other
There's no
thing to
audio.
remember is we did explain at the following meeting that, you know, I even checked my email. I remember at the table, it's like nobody, I had people actually after that meeting contact me, but by then we had already made the decision to move ahead.
Right.
So, you know,
Okay, so, is there any more discussion on this one?
Just,
Karen, you're going to make the notation
Yes, I am.
that
It'll
Mr.
be-
Sullivan's recollection is...
It'll be in the minutes for
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Excuse me.
I'm good.
Just checking.
On
think
to
I was just-
the approval of the minutes for August
With that
5th.
note.
with the
With
note,
the note,
I
yes.
approve it with the note. I just,
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
I didn't want to,
Okay,
It's
it'll have the note.
knowing that the note's
it'll-
in there, I
The note
approve it
will
with
be
the note.
there under the motion and the second.
Approval of the minutes for August 5th, 2011. Is there a motion to approve?
A lot of meetings, so moved. Second.
well, that's why we try to put some
Any
of these in
discussion on
here.
these?
No.
All those in
That one's good.
favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
What'd she say?
Eric was very vehemently no discussion.
He's cutting
That's
down the discussion.
unanimous. Approval of the minutes for Monday, August 8th, 2011. Is there a motion to
So moved.
approve? And
Second.
a second on that.
Second.
No
And discussion on this one? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that's unanimous. And we need to, are we adding?
Subcommittees.
No.
These are things that get renewed every year, and
Who's on these right now?
ADA is me and Mike, but apparently it doesn't go year to year. So
Mike Duat?
yeah.
Make sure I...
No, I'm sorry. Too many Mikes, too many Michelles, too many Karen.
Yes, I actually got a call. the other
One
day.
error.
There is only one
Yeah, it's only
error.
one
He
error.
does a great job, but I just...
No, it just needs some
We need
approval
to-
from the board so we
So
can go
moved.
to the
And a
meetings.
second?
Second.
Oh, wait a minute.
Eric
To approve the ADA
Okay.
appointments of Dr. Colley and Mike Duart.
and
Okay.
Jim
Second.
seconded.
Okay, got it.
Any discussion on that?
No.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And the Educational Fund Subcommittee, who's on that one?
Me and
It
who's the other one?
it was Tim.
Tim Herenstein. So when he's gone,
We need
we
someone.
need somebody else to replace
I'll,
him.
they haven't met in the past year?
It's the fund where if you want to give additional money when you do your taxes, it goes into a fund and then you can.
The one that you
call
write
for
on
it.
your tax
Like
Yes.
thing,
$3,
Yes.
$6.
Do you guys feel that you can handle managing that?
the billions that come in.
I'll join because I'd like to see
How much money
more
there is?
people
Yeah.
embrace that option.
So
So
moved.
So it would be Dr.
Second.
Colley and
Michael Sullivan this time instead of Duart.
Like
Okay.
Duart, like.
Or the other
Jim
Michael Sullivan.
Bernard and Eric. You
'Cause there's at least two.
second it.
There's at least, how many are there? Six? Six of them, yeah.
Got it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Any comments and statements from the vast public? There actually were a
I
lot
thought
of
there were
people
people.
here.
There were a lot of people
There
here
were.
today.
I think they wanted to
Yeah.
hear
They're not
the
public,
issue
though.
about when and why, how much.
Yeah,
I mean, so-
Tony.
To get back to some normalcy, something
What's that?
major happened today at the elementary school. Two very hardworking individuals, basically myself and Mr. Paul Oliveira, installed 5, maybe 6 whiteboards today.
Yes.
It's a beautiful day. We were in there for about 4 hours, 3
Thank you
hours.
very much, Tony. Pat on the back.
Thank you.
And
And good job
I
getting it.
have to say, we were able to utilize our new whiteboards
Yes.
today, which was neat to see some of the dollars that we're
Technology
spending.
Well,
spent.
actually,
due to the
the
generosity of
whiteboard
PTO,
is,
this is PTO.
Westmac PTO donated those.
right, but this whiteboard is old. The technology that you
Is
see on the
new.
left is new.
Right, that's what I
Yeah.
meant. The
So it
technology
creates
was,
kind of the same thing about, it's kind of the same idea of the whiteboard, it just, this one can be moved around
We covered a lot of the green boards or the black boards that we used to have.
With the new
some
whiteboards.
new ones, and this is why we chose this technology. It makes it a little cheaper.
Tony, how long did it take you guys to do that?
He's talking about
White-
not
Covering, yeah, not the...
Is this
yeah.
time and materials
Yeah,
quote, or is this?
It's kind of
gonna be
the
a-
same
4
idea.
hours. We were there for
Yeah.
about 4 hours.
How long did you expect before you
Well, we thought we were going to do one, but, we got better and better at
You
it.
kept, hey,
He did
give us
five.
another one.
Supervisors?
Thank you very much.
Just me and
He did
5 or
5
6.
or 6?
5, maybe 6. 6.
Oh, now it's,
Oh, yeah.
know.
7.
Send us the bill.
It was
I'm gonna
5,
go
there was
count.
5 full
gonna
rooms,
go
5 big ones and 3 small
See how the
ones.
job changes
I
without
have a
knowing?
whole middle school that needs whiteboards put up.
We'll
We
help
have
you
a
out.
stack
Just call
by
us.
yay high. Actually, 2 stacks.
Karen,
No, well, now
does
Tony
this
knows
come in
how to do it.
PDF form, do you know of?
Okay, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?